They've waged a war on domestic energy production. They canceled the Keystone Pipeline. They shut off leases on federal lands. They shut down drilling in Anwar. All of that's deliberate. It's what Joe Biden promised. He told Democratic primary voters, if you elect me, I will halt drilling.
And that's exactly what happened. You know, I got to tell you, this past Wednesday, and I called it what it was. It was nothing more than pure, unadulterated political theater. Congressional Democrats called executives from big oil companies to come testify. Come tell us why these prices are so bad. Basically, like I said, it was something tantamount to a high school production of The Music Man in their senior year. Why are you making so much money? Why is the working man paying so much? And one of the things they camped out on, as though we're too stupid to figure out what's happening, they were camping out of, well, you set the oil prices. And they know better than that. They know better than that. It was a House hearing. It was a response to Republicans' campaign to blame Democrats for inflation, now running at a 42-year high and keep going up. First, what did we hear out of the White House? Well, Putin, there you go. Russia's the reason we got high gas prices. Gas prices had already risen nearly 50% before Putin's troops ever made it to the Ukrainian border. Well, we're not stupid walking around bumping into trees, and it continues to go up. And then it's Russia, but it's big oil using Russia as an excuse. Again, blaming Russia, blaming Putin, blaming big oil companies. You know that big oil companies only own about 5% of the gas stations in America? Maybe 5%. The rest of them are owned by people just like you listening to me right now, working 12 and 16 hours a day, and they make a whopping 2 to 4 cents per gallon off every gallon. Gas station owners make more money if you just pull up in the drive and go buy a cup of coffee than they do selling a gallon of gas. So I'm sick of the. It's not Russian disinformation. It's White House disinformation. And there are enough empty-headed people out there that will buy into that. It's political theater. And that's all it is. Neither side, by the way, is prepared to push for the kind of action that they need to in wartime emergencies. All right. We're going to talk with somebody that knows a little bit about this. Jay Young, CEO of King Operating Corporation, oil and gas expert. I'm sorry. I'm just tired of the misinformation. It just pours out of the media like it's fact when it's anything but fact. Let's go to Jay Young, CEO of King Operating Corporation. As a former oil and gas attorney myself, working primarily in the Permian Basin, the Williston Basin, Powder River Basin, offshore concessions for Occidental, I know a little bit about this. Of course, the technology is just so further ahead now than what it was even 20 years ago, as far as being able to get oil out of the ground with fracking and all that. First of all, Mr. Young, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on again.
All right. Here's the deal. This political theater this past Wednesday, somehow, some way, trying to get the American people to believe that these increased oil prices at the pump are the fault of big oil companies setting the global price. Tell people how the oil prices are set, just so they'll know. Coming from an expert, not a talk show host, tell people how globally oil prices are set.
Yeah, it's all about supply and demand. I mean, and that's what I've been saying for the last couple of years on WBAP and other radio shows around the country. Is it's all about supply and demand, and we are still not back to where we were prior to the pandemic with rig count and production. And until that happens, prices are going to be up. And there's three reasons that we blame. Well, I say blame. There's three reasons that we could blame people, or I know the political part is what you talked about before, which I 100% agree with you. I mean, on one foot, they're telling us we don't want you to drill for oil and gas because we want you to go green, and then all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, we want you to drill for oil and gas because our voters are going to pay more at the pump, and they don't like it. So, yeah, how do you play that game? But so what they're doing now, I mean, there's three reasons why I mentioned the federal government, the state, the government. Let's just say the government's keeping us from drilling oil and gas wells. They're slowing us up. They're keystone pipelines, all of those different things. And you have institutions, people that have big money that fueled drilling rigs back in the day because they were putting so much money, hundreds of billions of dollars, into the oil and gas business, which is what it takes. It's not an easy, cheap game. It's an expensive game, and we need money. And the institutions are staying on the sidelines because of what the Democrats said at the very beginning, or politics, or saying about, well, we don't want to go into oil and gas. We want to go green, which I've coined the term greener because we'll never go green. We will go greener in the future because we're always going to need oil and gas. Always. I mean, asphalt car, or the roads, the lipsticks, the plastics, we're always going to need oil and gas. So we can't run away from that. But the third reason why is look at public companies. Look at Exxon, Devon Energy, these Pioneer. These companies have even come out and said, you know what? Even if oil does go to $150 to $200 a barrel, we're not going to increase our rig count because our investors want us to put money back, pay off debt, pay them in dividends. They don't want us to go back to drilling. So where do we have to go? I mean, it's like supply and demand. And if we don't have the supply on the market, especially this summer when gasoline, when people are looking to drive, on vacation and the demand is going up and we don't have that supply, which we won't because it's obvious because of rig count and U.S. oil production. Right. We're not going to have it. Well, then prices are going to continue to go up, and we're going to pay more at the pump. It's not going to be pretty for a long time.
Yeah, if you want to know where you'll be tomorrow, take a look at the rig count today, to coin a phrase. I don't see it getting better anytime soon. What I do see is more and more and more ridiculous misinformation and political theater about, well, you're paying more at the pump because of this party or this guy or that woman. Look, this is oil. The oil business, and I've tried to explain this to people. If you're not in a business, it's not your fault. You don't know. You just don't get a lease and go out there and stick a straw in the ground and suck out the oil. It's a little more involved with that. Psaki and the rest of the people in the White House keep talking about these 9,000 leases. Well, actually, about 3,000, maybe a little less, are tied up in litigation with various ecological groups. They're afraid you're going to step on some mesa mint or something. So that leaves you about 6,000. Well, a lease doesn't, number one, guarantee that you're going to find any oil through your geology. And number two, you got to get a permit before you do anything. So this whole argument about, well, the oil companies could lower the gas by drilling more, once you go in, you do the geology, you do the drilling, then the transportation, then the refining. I mean, why aren't people getting the truth?
Yeah, I don't know. And that's a great thought because it is. I mean, well, once we find the prospect, which in our fund, we bought 5 different projects, and we're now drilling in them, and we're getting paid after a year of we bought the prospects, we do our geology, we did the engineering, the land work. We're now getting paid in our fund for some of these projects that we bought over a year ago, and because it just doesn't. You're right. I mean, it's so much more, to come in and buy a prospect, to drill it, to get the money together. Money's hard. I mean, it's hard to get money these days. I mean, there's not any banks right now that are loaning money on anything other than, hard, oil in the ground, that you're producing right now. It's called PDP, but
right.
that producing property, that is all. I mean, they're giving you like 50% of the value of that, and that is it. And normally, if oil prices were like this, you'd get 60%, even 65% of your PDP, and you get a lot of money for PUDs, which is your proven undeveloped. But now banks are saying, no, we're okay. We're not willing to go out there and stick our necks out like we did a few years ago. I mean, in 2000.
Well, no, they're not going to do that. They're not going to ride down the hole with you like they did before, because you've got a federal government that is doing everything they can to throw speed bumps in the road. Why should they? If they did this with anything else, the stock would drop through the floor. It's what the way I look at it. It's a Washington blame game. Nobody's willing to step up and do what needs to be done. First of all, you got to tell the American people about the industry. That way, they know it's just snap your fingers and it goes to the pump. There's a lot of going on before it ever gets to the pump. And I hear people saying, "Well, we're going to boycott this gas station or that." Why? This guy's only making 2 to 4 cents a gallon on every gallon pumped, and he has nothing to do with the high gas prices. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't understand how the American people cannot know this, other than they're being told, well, forgive me, but they're being led down a different road by people being less than forthright about what's really going on, because they're playing politics with it.
Mm-hmm. Right, and if you're a Trump fan or not, he doesn't blame people. He may talk big, but he's one of those guys that he may talk, but then all of a sudden he is very proactive in a positive way of how to get something done. And what I mean by that is he would right now, if that's what's going on, he'd say, okay, we need to drill for oil and gas in the United States. We all know that. And he wouldn't blame anybody. He'd probably blame the Democrats just because he could.
Well, Mr. Young, we only have a couple minutes left. In your with your expertise, if you were talking to the public at large, which you are right now, what needs to happen for gas prices to go down?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and you got to drill, baby, drill. I mean, we've got to get back to drilling in the United States. We've got to go back to the people and talk to them instead of blaming other people. We've got to go back and say, hey, we've got to drill for oil and gas. The federal government, the state governments, because the states are sometimes worse than the federal.
Yeah,
in Colorado, Wyoming, California, and institutions and the public companies. Biden needs to be on a road show talking about drill, baby, drill, and handing out he's giving billions, trillions. I mean, why not do some of this instead of letting out our strategic reserve, which is another program all by itself we could talk about. But instead of doing that, he needs to get people back to drilling for oil and gas in the United States. That's oil. It's supply and demand, folks. It is not the oil companies that sit around in the mornings and go, hey, I wonder what we can get by with today.
Now, I appreciate you being so forthright. Jay Young, CEO, King Operating Corporation.